What's up troops, it's me TheTacticalBrit and I'm back again today with another lore video, and today we're going to be looking at the Lawrence of Arabia. Now this has been announced as another pre-order DLC, and today we're going to be looking at exactly who this person was, what they achieved in World War I, and why they were so significant. Now, as with all my other lore videos that I've made so far, please do research around this video. This is just a summarizing version of things that I have researched on the internet, and it's likely that you're probably going to hear me say lots of things that perhaps you may have already read. So just treat this as a summarizing version, and of course there'll be lots of details, facts and statistics beyond this that you can dive into. So, Thomas Edward Lawrence, otherwise more formally known as Lawrence of Arabia, became famous in World War I due to the work that he did in the Middle East. He gained an almost mythical statement amongst Arabs and was regarded as one of the biggest British influences in the Middle Eastern region during World War I. When war was declared in August 1914, Lawrence joined the intelligence branch of the General Staff. His knowledge of Arabic led him to be posted in Egypt, and he was regularly criticised by his officers for not following a lot of protocol. He didn't wear the uniform, he often wore Arab clothing, he didn't eat the food that was provided by the British, and he often socialised with the Arab people in the area. He was considered to be very unorthodox and even quite scruffy by other people who had worked with him on the British side of things. Now, the British military campaign in the Middle East had not started well during World War I. Their pursuit to take down the Turks had come to a halt in Gaza, and in other areas of the region the Turks had been far more successful than the British. The Ottoman Empire and the Turkish overlords eventually started swallowing a large amount of the Middle East and became unwelcomed in the region, and on the 5th of June 1916 the Arab Revolt started in Hijaz, and some called this the Arab Awakening. Now this revolt had some initial success. It captured Mecca amongst other regions, but the Arabs failed to take capture of the main rail line, which was what the Turks were using as a form of transportation, as a form of sending troops, and of course a supply route. And because of this, the original revolt lost a lot of momentum. In October 1916, Lawrence arrived to help investigate the revolt. Now this rail line, which was the critical part of the Ottoman Empire, was a single track affair that linked Medina to Damascus. Lawrence did not want to destroy the line, as he feared once the Turks had been defeated, they could use it themselves. As a result, he recommended harassing the Turkish along the route of the rail line so that they would have to use more and more troops to guard it along the length. It would spread out their forces, and the amount of Turkish forces would be quite easily picked off by those in the area. As Lawrence and the Hijaz Arabs moved further and further north, they linked up with Jordan tribes who joined his campaign also, and on July 6, 1917, Lawrence and his Arab followers captured Akbar from the rear after defeating an entire Turkish battalion. As a result of this success and working with the British in general, the Arab leader Faisal placed his men under the command of General Allenby, a British commander in Palestine. Allenby planned to use the growing Arab revolt against the Turks to his advantage, and he provided them with guns, ammunition and gold, and a small number of British, French and Indian troops were also sent to support them. Lawrence and General Allenby hoped that the success of Faisal would lead them to having a Turkish army overwhelmed by a demonstration of Arab unity. As the revolt became more successful, more and more Arab tribesmen joined it. This is exactly what Lawrence and Allenby had hoped for, and the Turks could barely handle the revolt. On December 9th, 1917, Allenby's forces entered Jerusalem. Lawrence was with him, and both men got on with each other despite their difference in ranks. Allenby in fact was also quite happy that Lawrence wore Arab dress, which is something that lots of British officers would not tolerate at the time. His unity with the Arabs proved successful in helping them gain momentum and helping them gain numbers, particularly around supporting the British and working alongside the Arabs. In January 1918, Lawrence led an attack on the Turks at Tafila, in which a whole battalion was destroyed. The British had finally set a date for a massive attack against the Turks, September 19th, 1918. Lawrence was asked by Allenby to launch a diversionary attack on the Turks at an important railway junction on September 17th. The attack was a great success, and as was Allenby's attack, and as a result the Turks were incredibly weakened. Faisal entered Damascus in triumph, and Lawrence took charge of civil and military order for several weeks, and of course on October 31st, 1918, an armistice was concluded with the Turks. Now, Lawrence was a very respected officer at this time, and the reason his success was so important in the Middle East is because the British hadn't been able to capture that kind of spirit and Arab unity that they were hoping for before. The reason this is such an important moment is because in order for the Turkish to be defeated, it was necessary to unite lots of different tribes across the Arab regions, many of which who didn't even like each other during this period of time. Lawrence lived alongside the Arabs who fought the Turks, which gained him a lot of respect and a lot of mutual understanding between the two groups, the British and the Arabs. He lived the life of a Bodwin, which was a group that descended from nomads who had historically inhabited the Arabian and Syrian deserts. Their name means desert dwellers in the Arabic language. He was always doing more than those he fought with. According to some people, he rid his camel further, he was pushing his body harder, and he ate what they ate, which actually led to a debilitating level of health when he finally returned to Britain. But by doing this, he gained the respect of those he fought with, and as a result, it was believed that he managed to get the Arab spirit on the British side. And that kind of unification between the British and the Arabs was eventually what brought down the Turkish forces. A sheikh who worked alongside Lawrence said, "Of all the men I have ever met, Al-Aruns, which was Lawrence's nickname, was the greatest prince." Now before he arrived in this region, the British campaign had been pretty stagnant, and after his meeting with Faisal, the campaign picked up. Lawrence went out of his way to befriend the Arabs, which was something that not a lot of British officers in the Middle East chose to do. This is best represented during a battle at Deraa, where he had a force of only 3,000 Arabs, but they tied down 50,000 Turkish troops who could not help their comrades against Allenby. The Turkish high command was so spread out across the 150,000 men that they had in the region that they were incredibly weak, and this was primarily down to the fact that Lawrence had used guerrilla-style tactics with the Arabs. He was considered to be a fantastic tactician, and by using the rail line as a central focus of guerrilla warfare, it's believed that he spread their forces so thin that the British and Arabs could finally crush them relatively easily. Now Lawrence actually accompanied the Arab delegation to the Versailles Peace Conference, where they actually expected a reward for helping the Allies in the war. They wanted full independence, and of course a full working government. Britain and France in fact actually ended up carving up the Middle East into their own zones, and the influence of the French even ejected Faisal from Damascus, who was the Arab leader during the revolt. Now after Versailles had finished, Lawrence resigned from the army as he was very much distasteful of what had actually happened to those he had fought alongside with, and felt that the British and the French were taking advantage. He enlisted in the RAF in 1922 under the name J.M. Ross in an effort to gain seclusion from the world that he had been living in. His health had been very much deteriorated from the time he spent in the desert, and his true identity was eventually found out by the media. He left the RAF and joined the Royal Tanks Corps under the name T.E. Shaw, however he did not take to the new life and eventually rejoined the RAF in 1925. He served in India from 1927 to 1929 before returning to Britain and stayed in the RAF until 1935. So that is the life of T.E. Lawrence, otherwise more formally known as Lawrence of Arabia, and it's very much understood by historians that until this man had arrived in the Middle Eastern region, there was absolutely no chance that the British were going to defeat the Turkish in the area, and it was from his unity and collectively getting all of the Arab troops together to work alongside the Allies that the Turkish were finally defeated. Several months after leaving the RAF in 1935, Lawrence was killed tragically. He was engaged in his favourite passion, which was riding his motorbike at speed, and he had turned his motorbike away when driving at 90 miles per hour, avoiding two boys who had suddenly appeared in the front of the road. He died at the age of 45, but is very much remembered as a legend in the Arab region during World War I, and to this day he is universally recognised by historians as being a changing force in the Middle East. As a last fun fact, there is even a film on Lawrence of Arabia which was made in 1962, and it has an IMDb rating of 8.4 if you want to go check that out. When Lawrence was buried, he was buried with 4 of his medals: the Order of Bath, the Distinguished Service Order, the Legion of Honor, and the Cross of War, avoided to him by the French. So guys, that's the story of T.E. Lawrence, and one of the things I'm really enjoying about doing these lore videos is that it's very much clear that the DICE developers are splitting up World War I into lots of different regions and recognizing the fact that this war wasn't just fought in Europe as it's often regularly perceived. It was fought in all kinds of regions by all kinds of different people, and it's nice to see people from the Harlem Hellfighters to this man here being recognized and looked into quite historically as well. Now if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button down below. Please leave a comment if you feel like you found any facts or information about T.E. Lawrence, or there's just something you're genuinely interested in and want to say, and of course make sure you share this video if you found it interesting too. It's been me, the Tactical Brit, and as always, thank you for watching.